Hello and welcome. It is another rousing edition of the Inside Mizzou Athletics podcast. I'm Matt Michaels. Brad Trinago, hello to you.
Hello, you're looking well rested. It's been a little while since we've been able to do one of these.
Well, you look just similarly blushing and
you,
well
buddy.
rested.
Appreciate you.
Indeed, there is a lot for us to talk about, and we will meet a new member of the Mizzou the men's basketball staff. But first, we have to remind you that our friends at Shelter Insurance power the podcast, as always. Shelter is ranked number one in customer satisfaction for auto insurance in the Central Region by J.D. Power. 6 of the last 7 years, we're your shield, we're your shelter. And Tiger fans, say aloha to Hawaiian Bros, where the island-inspired flavors are positively delicious. You'll love favorites like Huli Huli Chicken, Luau Pig, and the delectable Dole Soft Serve. Hawaiian Bros is just south of campus on Grindstone Parkway, or order online at hawaiianbros.com. And we would like to welcome, not just to the Inside Mizzou Athletics podcast, but to Columbia and Mid-Missouri, Steve Wright, who joins us now. He's assistant for Mizzou men's basketball, hailing most recently from Duquesne, but you're an Ohio guy, right, Coach?
Yep.
More than anything else?
Yep, originally born and raised in Dayton, Ohio.
Well, you mentioned Duquesne, so why make the move to Mizzou from there?
Just had the opportunity, Coach Gates gave me my first opportunity to coach at the Division I level. And obviously, I think I did a good job. I was there at Cleveland State with him his first year, him transitioning from assistant coach to head coach. And then after the first year, COVID hit, and I had the opportunity to go coach back at my alma mater at Bowling Green State University. And, I believed in his vision at Cleveland State, and it was kind of crazy. I walked in his office because, some people in Ohio reached out to me about, BG had an opening. And I didn't call Michael Huger. The first person I went in and talked to was my boss, and that was Dennis Gates. And it was kind of crazy. It was already in the works. And I told him I believed in his vision. And, was it going to be a good opportunity for me at BG, at my alma mater that I played at, he said it's going to be a great opportunity for you. You definitely have to go spread your wings and go be an assistant there, and that's what I did. And it was a great 3 years there.
That kind of speaks to something that we've heard from Coach Gates in the past, is that, he wants assistants and people who work on his staffs to have that recognition and have that opportunity. What did it say about him that even though you were just really in the infancy of him trying to get his feet set and have that head coach job rolling in Cleveland State, that he said, no, this is the chance that you have to take to go back home to a place that you knew so well at Bowling Green?
Yeah, Coach Gates is a development of people. You know what I mean? His players, he's a great mentor. I think players, his staff, everybody trusts him. And he's just an unbelievable person, man. And, like I said, I believe in his vision. I believe in his vision now. I always have. And I think that's the reason why I'm here. I'm here to serve and make sure that the program continue to excel, and make sure that, our players continue to excel on the court, in the classroom, and in the community as well.
Any good Dennis Gates stories from the slightly earlier days that you can tell us?
Not too many stories. I don't really have a good one. I don't really have a good one. No, I do have a good one.
Okay, bring it.
I take that back. I have a really good one. Our first year at Cleveland State, Coach Gates got the job pretty late in the summer, so we had to kind of figure out the players and who was coming in and who was leaving. And as we progressed through the season, you look at the stats, and we lose by 6 or 7 points, and you 6 for 12. Not 6 from 12. You 6 from 19 from 3, and you probably like 7 for 22 from the free throw line, and you lose by 2 or 3 points, and you like, Coach, man, we're right there. And the funny story was, man, to make a long story short, close towards the end of the year, I said, Coach Gates, man, I think you're gonna be coach of the year in the conference. And we're sitting at 8th or 9th place in the conference, and he kind of looked at me, he was like, really? And I guess I was right on the money. And his first year, he ended up being coach of the year in the Horizon. I called it because, like I said, I really, truly believed in his vision, the way that he treat people, not just our players and coaches, but just people around the city of Cleveland, people in the buildings, janitors, everybody, man. He's just an awesome person, and it's good to see him, being able to coach at the highest level and continue to impact people.
That is a great story because I was going to ask about that season, and I think everybody in the league understood at that time what Coach Gates was embarking on. I mean, Cleveland State had really struggled, and it was a midsummer sort of job to try to pull a team together. Being a member of the staff at that time, how did Coach Gates and how did you as a staff approach the challenge of we have maybe 5 weeks to pull this together when everybody else has been working for 5 months to get their team ready for the next season? How did you go about all that?
Well, you only had like 3 or 4 players when you all got there, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it goes back to relationships. It goes back to relationship and trust, man. Even though the guys we had, they believed in his vision. They trusted him. Our staff, we all trusted. And like I said, it goes back to the relationship part, man. And you win with people, and we had some good players that came through there. But, like I said, just with the support, with Coach, throughout in the community and things like that. And that's why he's been having success.
So you mentioned Bowling Green is your alma mater. You played there, so you have D1 playing experience. Mm-hmm. You've coached at the AAU level, the high school level, the junior college level, obviously the Division I level we already mentioned. How do you feel like all those experiences help you now in this role that you have at Mizzou?
It was awesome, man. Me playing at the Division I level, I was a Prop 48. I don't know, a lot of people probably don't know what that is, but it's back in the day it was when you didn't pass your ACT or you didn't get the ACT score, you needed 85% of your degree completed or graduation. And I played for a guy named Dan Dockage. He was the Bobby Knight guy. I played for Bobby Knight, coached with Bobby Knight, and just a kid coming in from the inner city of Dayton that didn't know anything, and I learned a lot from him. And I just felt like with the Bowling Green thing, man. I ended up graduating from there, and then I transferred to Northern Kentucky during their Division II era, and ended up being an All-American, and having the opportunity. But I think goes back, man. I think, with all the stops that I had, even at Cleveland State being a video coordinator, it helped me and mold me into a better assistant. I didn't know anything about the video and things like that, and it really made me a good assistant, man. And just building all those relationships from the JUCO level, the grassroots level, being a high school head coach, being able to run my own program and doing everything. As a high school coach, you do all of it. You do scheduling, you do travel. You ain't traveling that far, but, you got to put the buses and things together.
Mm-hmm. It's not charter flights, though.
It's not charter flights at all, but it really helped me. All those stops really helped me, mold me into the person and the coach I am today. And I just had the opportunity to work I've been lucky, you know what I mean? Like, I had the opportunity to work with Coach Gates his first year, then I worked with Michael Huger, and then I worked with Keith Danbrot, and then I worked with Drew Joyce. So, I've just been fortunate enough to work for, 3 good, really head coaches, and it's really been a blessing.
Tiger fans, say aloha to Hawaiian Bros, where the island-inspired flavors are positively delicious. You'll love favorites like Huli Huli Chicken, Luau Pig, and the delectable Dole Soft Serve. Hawaiian Bros, just south of campus on Grindstone Parkway, or order at hawaiianbros.com.
When you were playing at Bowling Green in Northern Kentucky and then eventually in Europe for a few years as a professional, when did coaching creep in for you as something you thought, I want to do this to continue my stay around the game of basketball? Was it later in your playing career, or was it something you always had your eye on?
I think after my sophomore year at BG, I wanted to take it as further as I could. I fell in love with it. I fell in love with the process of the daily grind of, being successful, from film to walkthroughs, being able to help people grow. That's why I coach. You know what I mean? I coach to see, these young men grow as people and be an extension to their family. I always say all the time, like, in 5 and 10 years, if these players are not reaching out to me about their having their first child or inviting me to their wedding, I didn't do a good job. So I really hang my hat on that, and making sure that I'm impacting those guys in those ways, because I really do value relationships. That they're important to me, and they're important to make sure that these young men grow as people too, not just as basketball players.
Well, you're not an old guy, but you haven't been doing this forever or anything like that, but you've still seen, I'm guessing, tremendous change in terms of just from the recruiting side of things with, name, image, likeness stuff now part of the game and, coming soon, the revenue sharing aspect with athletic departments directly contributing to student athletes. But as you've observed this at the professional level, what has that been like to see how the game has changed, I guess, specifically in recruiting?
It has changed, man. I know it's been very transactional, but I still goes back. I think it still is some transformational things, man. You still gotta have those relationships with high school coaches, parents, AAU coaches, and obviously now, you got to have the relationships, with agents and things like that. But I still think like the transformational things is still there, man. I think those things still have to be valued for you to be able to go out and recruit those type of high level players for the SEC. And it's fun. It's fun, man. That's what we signed up for. There's always going to be change, throughout any process that you're in. And you just have to adapt. And, I think, here at Mizzou, we have been adapting. Obviously, Coach Gates has done an unbelievable job, going into his fourth year, making the NCAA 2 years, out of 3. And I'm excited to, continue to get in the work and, just transition into the season.
It's got to be different, too, I'm sure, when you coach at all these different spots. Like you mentioned, you might have to drive the bus sometimes when you're at the lower levels. And now you work up to a Division I level that's looked different, well, even in the past few seasons when it comes to staff size and all the different people that you relate with. How important is it, in your experience, to have that central theme maybe for a team? Like Coach Gates has flat do it, and it is the cornerstone of everything that happens within that program. Is that more important now than ever, that everybody understands here are the cornerstones of what we do to pull in the same direction, so you know that each man or woman has their job to make the thing the best thing it can be? Because it would just seem like when you bring more cooks in the kitchen, sometimes things go astray if you don't have that kind of guidepost for yourself.
Core values is definitely important, but I think it's really just about, having a staff that understands each other. You know what I mean? And really focusing in on what coach wants you to do in that position. And we have that 1,000%. I think, that's the reason why I'm here. You know what I mean? I just try to do what's in front of me, what coach put in front of me. Yeah, I'll try to be innovative. But, if you tell me, hey, you got to mop the floors today, that's what I'm going to do. Mm-hmm. So really just being a star in your role, man, and understanding your boundaries of what you're supposed to do, what you're not supposed to be doing. And I think we really have that in our staff. I had the opportunity to coach with Ryan Sharbaugh and Dickie Nutt, and I knew Kyle Smith-Peters and Matt Klein as well. So it's an easy transition for me because I have to I had the opportunity to spend time with those guys. Not so much SP and Matt, but Dickie and Sharps. I have the long relationship with them guys.
You talked already about that first Cleveland State year and having to build most of the roster so quickly. You've got junior college experience, so I'm guessing typically that's most of that roster is going to turn over year after year. Again, when we're in this era where more of the rosters, even at the major college level, are going to turn over a lot, what do you draw from those previous experiences where, hey, you may have to go get a lot of guys quick? What are some of the keys to not only bringing them in, but making them into a cohesive unit quickly?
Yeah, I think really just being truthful, having them understand, the truth. And like I said, I keep, being repetitive with it, but it always goes back to relationship because, you just never know at the end of the year, like, what you're going to have. And so you got to keep those relationships at the JUCO level, at the grassroots level, at the high school level, and now, like I said, dealing with the agents and things like that. So it's a lot. It's more of being on the phone more now than it has been in ever. But I love it, man. I enjoy it. So there's a lot of sacrifices that have to be made. But my family, my wife, my daughters, they understand it, and they support it.
With that being said, of the group that we know will be returning to Columbia, it's a pretty solid core. It will be a veteran group that kind of drives everything. And, there have been reports about the additions that may be coming or not. But in terms of those guys who are here on campus that this is going to be the meat of our team, what excites you about the potential to work with some of these players that have been a part of an NCAA tournament team a year ago?
Yeah, just continue to help them grow. Continue to help us as a program continue to get further into the NCAA tournament. For guys like Ant Robinson, make sure that he continue to grow in the areas from a point guard standpoint, and becoming a two-way player. With some of the additions that we have, with Sean Phillips from Arizona State, Trent Pierce continue to grow as a player.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be an exciting season. And those guys, we've been doing a lot, since they've been on campus to make sure that they continue to come together as a unit, and we just got to keep getting better, 1% better every day.
As you've had a chance, these are the first few days where the players have been on campus going through summer workouts, and these are the first few days that you've gotten, I guess, to interact with them. What have been some of your first impressions now that you're on the inside with this program?
Really just their work ethic, their leadership qualities. You can just tell, last week being there with them being able to come together as a unit, and all the older guys being able to come in and accept the new guys, and open, their arms wide. And like I said, just, having the new guys understand, what they have built so far here, and just really just integrating the new guys into the culture.
I know that things might still have to shake out in terms of where everybody's going to work in terms of as a staff. I mean, you have your hands in everything at some points, but with your background as a guard, do you expect to have that hands-on time with the guards on this team, maybe more than some, to try to relay, from a player's perspective as much as anything else, the things that you can to them?
Yeah, for sure. Just really, me being a point guard, I was kind of on the ball and off the ball, but I will be working with the guards this year, and I'm excited, man, like I said, just to help them grow, from a basketball standpoint, and, help them reach, their goals as players, but just really spending a lot of time with them, not just on the floor, but off the floor, as well, watching a ton of film, so they can see, their strengths and weaknesses, and just continue to build off them, and help them, translate that, from practice, from, preseason into the season, until the end of the season.
Back in your playing days, you had some international experience in Germany and Finland. Do you have a big, culture shock experience for you going to these places, I'm guessing, for the first time in your life? Was there any one moment where you were like, oh, my gosh, this is wild?
Nah, it was. Coming from the inner city, going into a different country as a 23-year-old, and my wife was 21 at the time. Us having my first daughter who's graduating this year, who graduated this year, who will be attending University of Cincinnati. It was a culture shock, being in a different country, but it's all about adapting, and really, focusing on something that you really want. It was my dream to become a professional basketball player. I didn't get the chance to fulfill my dreams of playing in the NBA, but I had the opportunity to do it at a high level in Europe, and it was an unbelievable experience, being able to play in Europe, and just building relationships with guys over there who I still have relationships with, and it's been a ride, man, and I'm just riding the wave right now, and I'm excited about the new opportunity that I have here at Mizzou.
Which language is weirder to be a part of every day, German or Finnish?
I would say German.
German was weirder?
Yeah, it's weird. One thing about Europe, it's so Americanized.
Right.
Especially like Germany was super Americanized, man. About everybody spoke English.
Right.
They started at a young age, so it was easy to transition to Germany versus transitioning to Finland. But yeah, it was a weird transition, but I adapted pretty quick, and I really enjoyed my time in Germany. That's like a second home. I got guys that I played with that coach over there. I got guys that I play with that they run their German youth programs. So they'll be definitely trying to help us with recruiting and things like that too as well.
I was going to say, you're angling for the next international trip. You're keeping your passport up to date. Say,
sure.
Hey, coach, we've got to find some guys over there and bring them back here to mid-Missouri.
For sure. I got a guy named Chris Insminger, so he runs the Ulm. It's like south of Germany. He runs their youth program, and actually he's from Ohio. He's an Ohio guy, and I got the opportunity to play with Chris, and is a good friend of mine. And like I said, man, just really just valuing those relationships, because you just never know where you're gonna be. But it's genuine too, really genuine relationships, because anybody I come across that I work with, anybody that I coached, I view them as family. I really mean it, and I'll do anything to try to help those guys. So. Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited for, to continue this thing and keep it going.
Yeah, aside from wins and losses, right? Aside from the record that the team will have, what are you most excited about when it comes to this place, this opportunity right now ahead of you to join this Missouri staff and build something great?
Man, I think really, man, just being an extension to, like I said, being an extension to these guys' families, seeing them grow, seeing them graduate, seeing them reach their full potential as players, regardless of wins and losses. You know what I mean? It's about making sure these kids grow as people, man. And I think that's what I'm most excited about. Obviously, to build more relationships with people, in Columbia and through our athletic department. But yeah, that's what I'm most excited about.
Well, I know we're all excited to have you here. And again, a belated welcome, at least from us here on the podcast, to you. Joining us in mid-Missouri, Steve Wright, new men's basketball assistant coach under Dennis Gates, joining us here on the Inside Mizzou Athletics podcast. We appreciate the time and hope you have a great summer. Get to know these guys, and we can't wait for everybody to get to know you and this team as we get closer and closer to the fall and winter this year.
Yeah, appreciate you guys. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. That's Steve Wright. Brad and I will be back with much more going on around and inside Mizzou Athletics after you hear from our friends at Shelter Insurance.
This episode of Mizzou Storytellers on the Inside Mizzou Athletics podcast is brought to you by Shelter Insurance. Ranked number 1 in customer satisfaction for auto insurance in the Central Region by J.D. Power 5 out of the last 6 years. We're your shield. We're your shelter.
Indeed.
You good? Mm-hmm. All right. Then we'll do it here in 3, 2, 1. And the podcast is also powered by Socket Fiber. It's the fastest, most reliable internet. Combined with local service and simple billing, contact Socket today for voice, data, and internet services for your home and business. 1-800-SOCKET3 or visit socket.net. And Sophia's and Addison's restaurants. They're great local spots to visit before or after all Mizzou home games. Addison's has 2 locations in Southwest and downtown Columbia and features over 20 beers on tap, including local brewers and, of course, the famous Nachos Bianco. So remember, before or after the game, stop by Addison's.
A lot more Mizzou student athletes are going to be able to afford all the Nachos Bianco starting July 1.
Well, it's not like it was out of reach before, but
That's
if
true.
you have the idea of the college student who's just trying to scrape by, there will be a little bit more financial incentive to be a big-time college athlete or any college athlete after, well, as of now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, there are 2 sizes on the Nachos Bianco, right? And, the kind of the standard, if you have a group of 2 to 4, you probably get the smaller size. But you can also get the jumbo size. I've done that before to go, and it's just this enormous tray of just all the nachos and the yummy cheese. And
You're saying that there will be an upgrade for certain persons.
Well, yeah, they can do
large
whatever.
Size.
They can just, I'm picking up the tab for this whole thing.
Yeah.
You can even put extra banana peppers on there now. I'm good. I can swing it
Of
now.
course, Brad is referring to the fact that college athletics' planned new way forward is now at least for now, the official new way forward. And these things change all the time, right? But the so-called House settlement that you may have heard of has been approved by a judge to settle 3 different cases that have all come together and give college athletics a new way forward. Yes, that will mean direct payments of revenue sharing to current student athletes from the university athletic departments. It's never happened before. It's going to happen. There will be an upper limit that everybody can spend. For this upcoming season, it'd be $20.5 million. You can spread that within your athletic department however you see fit. For understandable reasons, there will be a lot of those dollars that go to football and basketball players. But there will be monies that go out to everyone. Everyone has a stake in it. And so everyone in some form or fashion will have this as a potential to share in the things that, again, they perform, they put in their blood, sweat, and tears and sacrifice to do it. I think it's only right, since the money's gotten so big, that student athletes get a part of this. And that is not even to be confused with name, image, and likeness, which continues as its own separate way for student athletes to supplement the money they can make off of the business of being an athlete, but with maybe some more guidelines and some more oversight as to how that goes about, to keep it from being just a straight, as you would say, pay for play that we know had happened in college athletics for years and years. We won't say that it couldn't happen in the future, but it's to try to rein that in and make it more to what the market would bear and potentially intend to have if a student wants to do their local advertising or someone wants to make you the face of a brand, that sort of thing, that I think everybody hoped when this all opened up several years ago would be how it went, and then it kind of went its own different direction.
Yeah, those are the top lines from the changes, which again are coming up in just a matter of weeks from the time we record this, starting July 1. Specifically from a Mizzou perspective, Athletic Director Laird Veach putting out a statement on mutigers.com, reiterating something he has said before, that Mizzou will commit the full $20.5 million to players in 2025-26. Colleges have the option of, opting into this settlement, and then, how much they want to opt into it. Mizzou's going to go to the max. That's going to be what they're aiming for. So it'll be $20.5 million directly from the athletic department to Tiger student athletes this coming year. That commitment he did mention, which I believe is new, 60 new scholarships totaling about $3 million for the coming year. You've probably heard the phrase "will to win" a lot when it comes to Mizzou athletics and the Mizzou Athletics Fund, and they're going to be asking for contributions on that. Which is understandable, right? Mizzou has committed to swimming in the deepest end of the pool here when it comes to revenue sharing, and imagine any business, like a business you have, if all of a sudden a $20.5 million expense just dropped in from the sky. Like, you're going to have to make some pretty significant changes, A, and B, any support you can get from the outside financially, you're definitely going to want to explore that and hopefully get that support from the fan base that has already made some pretty significant contributions. Now it's a different level, and again, this is the deepest end of the pool when it comes to college athletics. And if you want to see Mizzou hang banners, the reality is that there's going to be a price tag that probably goes along with that for a lot of fans. And obviously the understanding is that not everybody's going to be able to shell out millions of dollars to go get the next big quarterback or whatever. But whether that's going to games whenever you can, or spending a little extra at the concessions, all that matters, and all that's going to be factored in as Mizzou continues to try to compete among the very best in college sports.
Yeah, I think the element of this that maybe folks don't understand as well is the addition of those 60 extra scholarships. And there are sports like baseball and softball, some of these partial or equivalency sports, that goes away. If you get a scholarship, you get a scholarship, which I think is really important to some of those athletes who have been in those sports that have been impacted by different decisions at different points in time, and how this all plays out in terms of how it intersects with laws in different places. And you might have heard stuff about people signing agreements saying, we're going to follow the plan. Everybody's going to do it this way so we can all be on level footing. You'll see that sort of stuff change around it. But I think the basics for a day-to-day for a fan to understand is, at least at Missouri, the commitment is there to compete at the highest of level and compete at a level that is commensurate with their peers in the SEC. And without that, you'd be putting yourself at a very significant disadvantage in maybe the power amongst power conferences, or the autonomous amongst autonomy conferences, if you want to use it the way that some folks in power want to use it. Needless to say, if you don't make that commitment, you start to see things maybe go ways you don't want to see in other spots. And for Missouri to stand up very boldly, as I think the fan base has, and as Laird Veach has very, well articulated, is that we are going to do this because this is what we need to do as a part of our will to win. And I think everybody's jumped on board with that. And so we see where it leads us. But for now, I think it is leading Missouri in the continued direction which it has had, which is one of upward mobility and momentum across so many different sports.
This episode of Mizzou Storytellers on the Inside Mizzou Athletics podcast is brought to you by Sophia's and Addison's Restaurants. Sophia's and Addison's Restaurants are great local spots to visit before or after all Mizzou home games. Addison's has 2 locations in Southwest and downtown Columbia and features over 20 beers on tap, including local brewers and, of course, their famous Nachos Bianco. So remember, before or after the game, stop by Addison's.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and I think that, we're hoping that our next Inside Mizzou Athletics podcast guest will go a little more in depth into what specifically this is going to mean from a Mizzou perspective. But I would say that as we've seen already some really significant changes when it comes to like the name, image, likeness space, Mizzou and the university and even state legislators who have previously been Mizzou athletes have really done a good job of being nimble and kind of jumping to the front of the line when it comes to a lot of the changes that have been happening in college athletics. And I don't think it's a coincidence that we've seen back-to-back 10-win football seasons during this NIL era. It's because Mizzou so far has shown some really good leadership, and they've gotten kind of ahead of some of these changes, and they've positioned themselves well to be a significant player in this era as college sports changes. And now, starting July 1, we're going to see a really significant change again. And I think if you're a Mizzou fan, you got to feel pretty good about the leadership that's in place, both with the athletic department and with like the football program and other places, for example, that they've shown some nimbleness and some flexibility to adjust and be able to continue to compete at a high level. And, the hope is, and I think it's reasonable to kind of expect at this point that Mizzou is going to be able to continue to be among the heavyweights.
I should correct myself. It's not that partial scholarships will completely go away in some of these equivalency sports, but you will see many more full scholarships offered.
They can go away.
Yeah,
used to be you
can make them go
yeah.
away. In fact, you can give a scholarship to anybody up to a roster limit, and that's going to be the main thing that changes. The roster sizes everywhere are going down, and that is just to have a leaner, meaner operation. And it also means, some people worry about, the fate of the walk-on. I don't think that's going away completely anywhere, but I do think that, yes, you will see as a result of this, at the very least, more athletes who didn't have an opportunity at a full-ride scholarship to the University of Missouri. They get that opportunity now, even if they're not the person who's going to be making, numbers with zeros behind it, in terms of direct revenue share. All that stuff is to be figured out. That's why institutions have flexibility to do it. Missouri committing again to do that at a high level is something I think to be commended. And again, we all get to see together where this thing goes in the future. And part of where it goes, by the way, is in something that never would have existed, I think, in anybody's mind's eye 5 years ago. You now have general managers of programs at the highest of levels, and now Missouri men's basketball has one. They put out the call, and Tim Fuller, who should be a familiar face and familiar name to Mizzou men's basketball fans from years past, will return in that role for Dennis Gates, which I think is very neat, and it shows, again, the commitment of that program to continue to progress and evolve as times change. Missouri's not going to be left in the dust on that.
Steve Wright is not the only new hire for Coach Gates. Yeah, Tim Fuller, certainly a familiar name to Mizzou basketball fans, and this is straight from the press release. Strategic planning and roster construction with an emphasis on alumni engagement, agent relations and NIL optimization. Those last two especially were words you know.
They didn't exist 5 years ago.
Right. So it's a whole new world. But, a lot of it, a good chunk of that role, I'm guessing, is going to be spending the money that you do have wisely and then working to get more of it, that's going to be a big part of Tim Fuller's job, I'm sure. You mentioned he's been a big-time assistant coach, not just at Mizzou, but a lot of other programs around that size. He's also been an executive at Nike. He's played a role in that Overtime Elite basketball league. So, he's a well-connected guy that's, I'm guessing, nobody really knows since these general manager roles are so new, but I'm guessing that's also going to be an important part of this.
In the basketball world, his reputation precedes him in terms of the places he has touched, basketball from the grassroots on up.
Well, and what did Coach Wright just say to us, over and over again, how important relationships are, especially in the men's basketball space. And, Tim Fuller's a guy he's a name that a lot of people in the important circles know. And, again, it's a really fascinating time, even on the edge of it, like you and I are, to be a part of college athletics and to see what this is going to look like. Even 2030 is not that far away, which is hard for me to believe, but how this even looks in 2030, it's going to be really fascinating.
Well, and he stayed connected even with his Missouri connections. You want to talk about relationships recently at Providence, where he worked with Kim English to do the same sort of thing. NIL, this sort of development, everybody has to do it. So relationships, obviously very important to Tim Fuller. I know everybody welcomes him back with open arms here to Columbia and excited to see what his impact will be in his role as Mizzou men's basketball's first general manager, and maybe not the last general manager by name for Mizzou programs as time goes on. We just all get to find out together. Of course, it's amazing that we speak here in approaching mid-June, and it's not like the NCAA is officially done yet, and it's not like Mizzou Athletics is officially done yet. There is competition still in track and field to be had for Missouri Tigers this season.
Yeah, 4 women and 2 men representing Mizzou will compete at the NCAA Outdoor Track and Field Championships this week, and of course that's as always in Eugene, Oregon. So that competition starts Wednesday of this week and continues into Saturday, and we wish those 6 all the best of luck as they compete out there. And they're the last 6 Mizzou athletes competing with the Mizzou across the chest. Of course, a lot of other folks are still out there and doing various either competitions or workouts or preparation for their sports. And, of course, with us here at the podcast, we'll still be on kind of a sporadic schedule for a little while longer, but we'll start ramping up as we get ready for the fall season, which I'm sure will be here before we know it.
Talking season's only a month away, right?
Yeah, baby.
So, if you can't survive until talking season, if you can't go your 1 month without your daily dose, then you really are a college sports sicko like some of us are.
I got to get in the lab, right, for talking season. What we've done mascot fights already. I don't know if we need to. I'll have to come up with a different,
we'll brainstorm,
like a mascot fight type thing, but different. I don't know. We can't quite do a general manager fight yet because everyone doesn't have one.
No, that wouldn't be a level playing field.
No,
yeah.
it wouldn't be the same.
No, not quite. So we'll get there, and we will keep you entertained, we're sure, throughout. And again, we look forward to bringing you guests throughout these next several weeks until we really start talking about who's going to be playing on the field again and where they're going to be playing and all that fun stuff. But we are glad to bring you an Inside Mizzou Athletics podcast wherever we can, and we are also glad to thank very much our good friend Marquise Jones for producing for us here this fine day. And it's been a fine day for us and for you, and a big thanks as well, of course, to the new addition to the assistant basketball staff of Mizzou Men's Hoop, Steve Wright, for joining us. A great conversation there. Hope you enjoyed it. Brad, I hope you enjoy these many weeks.
I do, man. It's the
and your many travels. Got
a little vacation time coming up too, but it's the calm before the storm here, man. We're just a few weeks away from getting back to the good stuff.
We will be indeed. So for Brad, I am merely Matt Michaels. Thank you for joining us. We'll talk to you next time on the Inside Mizzou Athletics podcast.